you'll hear what we're saying.
Okay, when the timer's counting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we pretty much on. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 12 of the Ark Podcast. And boy, am I excited to be back here talking to you guys because the news has been popping off. It must be an election year. Firstly, Whistleblower claims that the Electoral Commission has fabricated data to shift more people to the yes side. How councils are implementing Aboriginal treaties by stealth and how you can fight back. Christian preacher to be dragged before the Queensland Human Rights Commission over his opposition to welcome to country ceremonies. Plans for 2 new silver and gold mines scrapped in New South Wales worth billions. Why is Facebook removing pro-nuclear energy posts? The UK government is set to release prisoners early to make room for up to 5,000 protesters arrested for calling for lower immigration in the UK. Also out of the UK, extreme misogyny will be classified as terrorism under new UK government plans. The New South Wales Liberals in a civil war as Tony Abbott calls for Don Harwin's resignation over the council election debacle. I'll explain. All public service employees in Victoria to receive a one-off payment of $5,600. The Democratic Party in the US hold their convention in Chicago. Kamala Harris shies away from a debate with Trump. Alison Langdon wins a silver medal in the Logies for Best News and Public Affairs Presenter. Does she deserve it? And the Church of England has dropped the word church to be more modern. I'm really excited for this particular show because not just the topics are different, but we've also got some fresh faces on the podcast. To help us meander through this, we've got a familiar face, Chris de Bruyn, who is a podcaster. He is someone that's been doing this longer than I am, and he has covered many protests really eloquently. I've also got former member of the Victorian Liberal Party and a member of the lower house in Victoria, Jeff Shaw, who is actually the author of the Unmasked book, which is Unmasking Dan Andrews, which we're going to go through a little bit as well. And on my left, another new face, Paul Vallejo. Paul is a man that is really, a friend to me, and he's someone that's got an excellent background in his previous work with NASA as an aerospace engineer and also an expert on nuclear energy. And before I get into this podcast, I want to say a big thank you to all of you again for sharing the podcast. I mentioned on the promo for this video that we've reached 900,000 viewers online in our last podcast. Everyone that's viewing the podcast clips, and that's not me, that's you, because you guys have been sharing it, you've been getting it out there, and if it wasn't for you, it wouldn't get out there, because you know they're trying to censor us. Also, may I also direct your attention to the Light Australia newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be coming to WA very soon, but before I do, I wanted to let you know about this newspaper. It's brand new. It's the edition 13. It's the first one that I've been working with the team on really effectively. And can I just throw kudos to the team at the Light Australia, especially those in WA and around the country that have brought this together. It looks brilliant. And I probably swore complimentarily about 5 times last night when I first looked at it and read through it and picked it apart. There's some great articles from Senator Ralph Abbott, which is the front page about excess deaths. And there's also another one from Senator Roberts as well, which is a full spread page as well. And also, at the very back, you will notice that Candace Owens is coming to Australia. So she's doing Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Auckland in New Zealand, and Perth as well, which I'll be coming to very soon. On this graphic here, you can see that I'll be dropping into Perth to not just meet many of the lovely people that are in Perth that have helped bring the Light Australia newspaper together, but also specifically I will be getting and laying down the grassroots and the groundwork for the state election in March next year. I haven't forgotten about it. I haven't travelled to WA more than any other state. It's the best of the states in terms of the voice and the pushback. We saw what you guys did over there, and I'm excited to share my plans with you guys. But without further ado, enough from me. Let's go into the actual topics. The first one that we've got here is actually out of the Guardian newspaper, claiming that a whistleblower has claimed he was told to fabricate data for the Electoral Commission during the Indigenous Voice campaign. You remember that vote last year for the Voice where a lot of people were saying vote no, like me, and a lot of people were saying vote yes to put a voice for the Indigenous people in the Parliament? Well, it turns out that private research that was done, commissioned by the Electoral Commission, was allegedly fabricated, according to this whistleblower. This related to a specific poll that was conducted, and it really was quite shocking when I saw this. Now, a lot of Aboriginal people that I've interviewed, like Alec Dumagy of the Northern Territory in Queensland, which is where he resides, he was saying, Joel, this isn't real, and you need to read this, you need to talk about it on the show. I was just talking to him today because it's not right. Now, I'm just trying to find exactly what the poll was, but specifically this story shows that what they've been trying to talk about with regards to Aboriginal people, it's not actually accurate. Did you guys, Chris, what was your reaction when you first saw this?
I was horrified. I'm reading the article now, and I'm absolutely horrified by it. I'm shocked. For one, I'm shocked that the Guardian would even run this. Like, why would you run this? So credit to you, Christopher Nouse. Like, fantastic. Running news when you see it, regardless of agenda. Fantastic. Gives me hope. Because I run stories that are against my side. Everyone says my side. No, I run stories that are critical of what people say on my side of it because it's true. I think it improves your side. But seeing this, that McNair said that he was told to alter the location data of the surveys to make it appear they were from regional areas.
Because what is it? Like 80% of the Aboriginals around the country, maybe Jeff, you'll know, 80% of the Aboriginals, they reside in in regional areas, not regional, urban areas. Sydney, South Australia, Adelaide. And so specifically in these areas, they're saying that, okay, if you vote a certain way, especially a lot of these activists, and by the way, I don't believe there was an Aboriginal check on a lot of them, the idea that they are now considered to be rurally based in the Northern Territory, and I mean, the data manipulation was nuts when I was reading through the article.
Did you expect anything less? Well, no, serious. I'm being serious. I know our top 3 stories are on, let's say, Aboriginal affairs. Did you expect anything less from this campaign? From the start last year, in Victoria, I did not see one no sign on anyone's house. I don't know if that was different here in New South Wales. There was no one that had a no sign. Yeah. But there was a number of people that had yes signs. And when you question that with people, Paul, here, I don't know if you have that same thing in the States, but when you question people here who wanted to vote no, who were going to vote no, but they weren't going to put anything on their house because you know what would happen.
Yeah, that's true. I think there was fear of being outside of that narrative. You know, we have this situation where the compassion has been hijacked. And in order to kind of be part of what we're thought you're supposed to be the good person clique, you have to stay within certain bounds. And, you know, the other side tends to react actually rather mob mentality like if you go outside that, you know, those bounds, but it's fake. And I don't know if you happen to know this, Joel, but I mean, I'm actually Indigenous. I mean,
really?
we're all Indigenous.
Yeah, I'm Indigenous.
You know, we're all Indigenous.
Correct.
But I'm actually Indigenous to you know, one of the groups that was colonized by the West. Now, it's Native American indigenousness. But I understand I can apply for transfer victimization credits. Is that true?
Is that right?
I think so. I think that's the way it works. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that funny?
But certainly putting the no vote up here, and it would be a dangerous thing to do. Your house would have been vandalised, it would have been egged, your car tires probably would have been slashed. But that didn't happen anywhere. I didn't see a yes sign that was vandalised.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I did actually see some yes signs vandalised after the election. I saw
Okay.
one very infamous one getting run over on a roundabout, which I ended up posting, but that wasn't me. But no, I did see stickers on a lot of signs on the road on the backs of them. So it stop signs quite intelligently. They were putting them on the back of them, so people, when they're stopping, they see it on the back end of it. But after the referendum, it's like people were given permission to vandalize the yes sides because they knew they were right.
Yeah.
See, the yes side they extended a very large shadow. They made it seem as though they were going to win. And it's tactics like this, if what this whistleblower is saying is actually true, and I haven't seen anything from the Electoral Commission to say it's not. I mean, our Electoral Commission is one of the best in the world, from what I understand. But this is a devastating blow, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I read through the article. Who else is going to do it? Would you trust the government to do their own polling for that? Or you've got to go to an outsider. And in this case, they did. It wasn't done properly. The vote was lost.
The polling's definitely manipulated. There are lots of ways to cook the sausage, and oversampling certain populations, finding people who aren't representative of the average, and it's happening a great deal in the United States, where they're this fake enthusiasm for Kamala is done by manipulating polling. This what do they call it? Astroturfing. There's no real groundswell. It's all fake. Now, that's not to say that she doesn't have support, but the finger is definitely on the scale in order to try to amplify the perceived popularity of someone who, for a Democratic Party, didn't receive a primary vote.
Exactly, and this is the thing. So we weren't shocked. You said, were you shocked? I was not shocked, but now I'm really worried because the other thing Alec Dumaji said on election day, I posted a video of him. He was on the phone with his mum, and he was basically saying, oh, look, the Electoral Commission staff at the voting place, they're telling me it's for this, the Voice is going to do that. It was all complete lies about what it was going to do, so they were clearly manipulating data. First off, Electoral Commission people, as you know, the workers aren't meant to tell you information about the policies of a party or a proposal. They're not. They're meant to be like, look, if you want to vote this way, you vote that way. If you want to vote this way, you vote that way. Put it in the box. Put it in the box. That's it. That is. And when people asked them, what is this about? They told them, they sold it, they marketed it for free. And on top of that, it was false. And so he's on the phone with his mum and he's like, no, mum, because Alec, he had his own reasons. He was saying, they're trying to make us cede our sovereignty if we do that. Because he's from that sort of, a unique part of the Aboriginal community that actually believes that they're going to cede their sovereignty by consent. If they vote no. And he truly believes that they manipulated the regional data in these mobile voting centres in that direction. Yeah, okay. And if that comes to light and we do find receipts and some whistleblowers come forward, which I encourage, you can reach out to me at joel@arkpodcast.com. I mean, this is really shattering stuff. And going into our next story, did you guys have any thoughts about that before I go into it? Yeah, Chris, please.
I can give you some of the quotes of what the whistleblower says, that he was describing it as the ultimate betrayal of himself. And the reason why, why would you do this? The subcontractor said they didn't have the budget. They didn't want to. They didn't have the interviewers that could get out there. And that's a fair point. How do you get someone to go? But to lie, to do that? Okay, you can't get to far North Queensland. All right, fine. Don't say it. And the text messages that are being expanded saying, I'll need you to do this. I need you to put in we need to complete 40 more by the end of tomorrow. Can you please ensure that all respondents in the interview live in the postcode? That's how it was delivered to him. And that's what he feels so betrayed by this. And he asked, why can't we get the interviewer to do it? And the superior responds, because you don't have one. And that's it. They just abandoned it. And they stuffed the data up. Yeah. Stuffed it up.
To make matters worse, not only did we have a democratic vote and people didn't consent to this, but now we're in a situation where they're trying to move forward anyway. As we know, after the vote, they just like, well, the states and the councils can just proceed. This next story is from Ben Ford, and Ben's doing a cracker job. I don't know who's writing his stuff. Maybe I do. But these stories are very, very good. And this segment from Ben, just short, is talking about how the councils are actually trying to introduce treaties by stealth, specifically in New South Wales, with a friend of the show, Steve Christou, who's running for council. Check it out.
Breakfast on 2GB
873.
Well, Cumberland City Council has tried to keep this one quiet. They seem to be on a mission to implement a treaty by stealth. plans are currently in motion to sign a treaty between 3 Indigenous land councils within the Cumberland local government area. It would acknowledge that the land Cumberland is on was never ceded. It would require consultation with the 3 land councils before any developments are undertaken in future. It's also proposed dual Indigenous names for signs. But there has been very little community consultation, and the Cumberland area voted 64% no in the Voice referendum last year. Steve Christo is the Cumberland City Councillor. He's on the line right now. Good morning to you, Steve.
You get the gist of it, Rami. Well, did you have something to add on this?
I don't know, Mr. Joel, what you read in the entry to the show, but you've said something that triggered TikTok. I just got a message saying access is suspended. Reason: repeated violation of community guidelines.
You're joking. So we just literally, as we've been live, nuked off TikTok.
Correct.
Anyways, on Rumble and X, we are continuing the show with YouTube. This is literally just another day with the Conservatives. Specifically on this topic, the changing of dual signs, that rings a bell. That rings a bell. That reminds me of New Zealand. They have dual signs, and people are complaining, look, I'm trying to drive my wife to the hospital. She's in labour, and I don't know where the hospital is on this highway because they've got, the Maori language, and then they've got the English often missing, and he doesn't know how to get there. I mean, what were your reactions to that, guys?
Like I say, these top 3, Aboriginal affairs is high on the list because the Labor government are doing nothing and listening to people with regards to cost of living and all the other crises that the everyday person, including, I'm assuming all of us around here, go through. I'm getting frustrated with it, Joel. I've been frustrated for a long time. The welcome to country, which we'll be talking about later, the flag and the division that's happened in this. Not all Aboriginal people want this sort of stuff.
Right.
But it is the left who wants it. And the left, Paul, are from any country where they speak like you as an American, or whether they're Aboriginal or wherever they're from. It's the left that are causing these divisions.
But the people have already spoken. There was already a no to these proposals.
Yes,
and nevertheless, it's being pushed through. I mean, I got, I suppose, 3 problems with it. One is it's anti-democratic. The people have already spoken on the issue. The issue should be settled. If you're a representative government, you should represent. Another issue is, the underlying principle of reparations. I'm not a fan of intergenerational collective punishment. It doesn't make sense. We're responsible for our own actions. So this idea of reparations, I grew up Catholic, and you have the idea of original sin. And, it's just one of those things that it never made sense to me. We're responsible, it has a lot of good values in Catholicism, but we're responsible for our own actions, not necessarily the actions of, a prehistoric woman who happened to not be able to keep her hands off of citrus. For that, I'm eternally damned. It doesn't make much sense. So, this concept of guilt by, from actions of other people in previous generations makes no sense.
I think especially in Victoria, the councils there like to be bigger than what they are. They like getting involved in this, what they might call meaty stuff. So they don't worry about the things that they're there, the core things they're there for, like fences, like for local roads, like for rubbish. They want these bigger, more meaty things. And people who join the council in Victoria, many of them tend to be from the left. And they bring this ideology with them. In Victoria now, in some suburbs, there are 4 bins. 4 bins. One for green waste, one for plastics and newspapers, one for glass, and one for general waste. This is the mentality of the left. And to do things like we're talking here with finding a treaty, well, no, let's just fix up our society that we're living in here. And not the sins, as you said, Paul, of the past 200 150, 250 years ago.
Our compassion is being weaponized against us over and over and over again.
I was shocked a couple of weeks ago. We had Ben Britton on the show, and he was saying that they're starting to pick up the general waste bin once every 2 weeks now. It's it's like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah,
if anything, if they were getting more crammed, we need more often to come. But anyway.
Why Krista is so upset is because they didn't pass it by the council. They passed it through a subcommittee. Through the asset committee, they were about to pass this. And that's why he's flipped his top. Because fairly said, if you're going to start signing treaties with 3 different councils, Gundagarra, Durrag, and the Metropolitan Local Laboratory, if you're going to start signing treaties, well, this is kind of a higher level decision. Should it be done by council at all is the question well and truly beyond that. But he's upset because it's just being shoved under some subcommittee and he isn't getting a say. So that's why he should be flipping his lid, even if he did say it.
And they're not stopping, are they? We do have local elections, by the way, before I forget, coming up in New South Wales. They're coming up on September 14th. We will be doing how to vote cards through the Turning Point Australia entity that we run. So you'll be able to put your address in and it'll spit out a how to vote card no matter which of the 130 councils you're in. An impossible task I'll tell you about later. But also in Victoria, local elections on the 26th of October as well, which we'll also be doing, which is the same day as the Queensland state election. So it's a busy time, guys, busy time. But another topic on this Aboriginal, and it just keeps coming, doesn't it? We had the vote, and I've got 4 stories here where they're just still pushing through it. Christian preacher to be dragged before the Queensland Human Rights Commission over proposed welcome to country ceremony. Now, this is a friend of the show, Dave Pello. They basically, he was asked at an event, why don't you do the welcome to country? Welcome ceremony, which is basically, at the start of the event, you say, well, we recognise the emerging and past and present and whatever of the people on this land. And he's being taken to court over it. Now, he held a live stream last night to raise funds for John Steenhoff, who is running a lot of these actual campaigns. And they raised over $150,000 through Give, Send, Go, just so that they could fund a lot of these pushbacks, which is really encouraging. But what is this industry we've developed? This is such a waste of time and resources and everything we're doing. Wouldn't that money be better used for other things? But we're just fighting with each other, and the only winners are the lawyers. It's nuts.
Why are we making people like this a criminal? Now they're getting he's been for not saying something. So people are getting offended because you didn't say it.
Yeah.
So it's a sin by omission. Really.
Bend the knee. Pledge your fealty. This is absolutely antithetical to fundamental Western values. You have what they call the difference between positive rights and negative rights. You have the right not to have your rights infringed upon you. You do not have you cannot be compelled to provide, give, or say. This is not something. This is absolutely antithetical to the Western ideals that have built what we have. This idea that offense comes above your fundamental right to think what you want is insane.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And it reminds me of Bill C-16, which you might remember with Jordan Peterson in Canada, where he said, I oppose this because you're putting words in my mouth. Why should I use words that's not the truth? You're a man or you're a woman. Why should I do that? And it was the concept. If the government starts putting words in your mouth, you nailed it on the head. And that's fundamentally why he wasn't budging on it. He was basically, send me to prison. I will fast. I will do this. I will do that. I won't eat. I'll protest like Gandhi just to oppose what you guys are doing. And it woke everyone up, and that's how he rose to really prominence. But it's coming.
I had a thought when I was chewing on these articles that I think Australia, unfortunately, it's like a Shakespearean tragedy. Our virtues are being weaponized against us. I've been around the world. I've been to 50 countries. I've had high curiosity and a wanderlust. And, there are fantastic things about this culture. It is polite. It's a beautiful, the love of nature. It's kind. It's compassionate. But those very things are being used to strangle our fundamental freedoms. And so this is, one of those things. I'm just a kid from the Bronx. Okay, 3 science degrees and wandered around that, and eventually ended up here. But I ended up here by choice because I love the values and the land. And it's so sad to see those things truly weaponized against the people and what the country is about. And that's the nature of the Shakespearean tragedy, is that your values are weaponized against you. Now, the one thing about New York that you couldn't walk 3 blocks without someone trying to scam you. So you're always kind of on the lookout for how someone's trying to take you. when it comes to these Aboriginal land grabs or the people trying to weaponize your compassion against you, that's when a little bit of New York training kind of kicks in. Forget about it. What are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And I really think that we could use, unfortunately, a little bit more cynicism when it comes to how we're being played, because really got to wake up to the game.
There's a few more, New York sayings I can think of as well.
It's the left that utilises these little things.
Yes.
Though. It's not the Aboriginal people
Yes.
as such, though, as we mentioned before, there are Aboriginals who are left.
Yeah.
Just as there are Americans that are left.
Absolutely.
Other Australians that are left. It's the left that are pushing their agenda.
Absolutely. They use it like a face mask, like Chainsaw Massacre.
But it's the right that continue to operate as if they're still this lord and this is the way things used to be. The right continues to operate as if it has an entitlement to what the future was because they look at the past and they say, well, therefore, ... this should continue. No, it is all up for grabs. And we're in a diverse, multicultural, tossed salad we are starting to approach. Who do you share your views and values with? Where's your pod? Because you don't get to say, oh, we're all sort of part of the same pod. Those other pods don't want you. They're their own pod. They've seen you, they've assessed you, and you're not socialist enough, you're not diverse enough. Whatever it is that you aren't with them, you've got to now find who your people are.
So not the melting pot, but the tossed salad.
Exactly. That's where the left is now moving it to. No, really, this Muslim votes matter. They're seminars that they're holding. We're no longer melting. Toss salad.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts, and it's that. It reminds me of that. Speaking of Candace Horns, it reminds me of what she said. The most dangerous day in my life was when I stopped thinking with my skin, and I started thinking with my brain. Essentially, was what she was saying, and that's the point. It's like if you're an Aboriginal man or woman, you're not meant to think certain things. It's the same reason why it's silly to think that I would think the same way as a Muslim that looks like me. It's silly, and that's the funny thing about the Muslim world. They don't think the same. They've got Shia, Sunnis, Alawi, different denominations, and the same with the Christian world. You've got Protestant, Pentecostal, Coptic, Anglican, Catholic. I mean, it's nuts. And it's like, oh, no, if you're this, you have to think the same way. It's a trope. It's race hustlers. It's religion hustlers that are driving this because there's money in it. There's lots of money in it. Grants. There's anti-terrorism money that you can get through grants in Victoria. There's money with regards to, these Aboriginal grants that never make it to the grassroots. And that's what people like Alec Dumaji, head of his tribe, actually say. He say, it's not getting to us, Joel. That 40 billion, it's not going to us. It's going to people in Canberra.
Where's the trickle down? No trickle down. I have this discussion about race all the time with people, and I try and discuss generally with racist is a broad term these days. So pretty much everyone talking about race that isn't calling someone racist is now racist. Yeah. But I have this discussion about race all the time, is that Christian is a very broad church now. It includes a lot of people who don't believe in God. And it includes people that you would be identified as a Christian. If someone would look at you and say, oh, you're a Christo-fascist or whatever it is now. That is now a broad church. They are now your people. So it really is about identifying who is part of your in-group in that broad, it's a broad Western Christian, whatever you want to call it, and who isn't. You're in or you're out. What's your in-group?
To make matters worth, going back to this Aboriginal topic, and again, this isn't the Ben Fordham show, but I just love his content. There was a real change with Ben Fordham ever since the Canberra protests. He started to I really saw a step up for him. He did struggle to actually find his feet after Alan Jones left 2GB, but there was a click after that changed, a switch in his brain. And I've seen his stuff, and more recently I've been very impressed by the research. This is another segment where he's calling out exactly what happened with regards to 2 mining projects in New South Wales, which are not going ahead. One of which is a gold mine, the other one which is a silver mine, and the idea that New South Wales and Australia is going to miss out. And obviously, this is obviously tied back to the Aboriginal issues, and we all miss out.
Reaches you at 30,000 feet. Call your travel agent or book now at FijiAirways.com.
Sorry for the ads.
News you can trust. Opinions that matter. Now, Ben Fordham comments.
Sorry, I can't help but laugh.
Well, Chris Minns and Anthony Albanese better be listening. The New South Wales mining sector is in meltdown this morning because the state's 2 flagship mining projects have just been cancelled by state and federal governments and courts. And it's all because of red tape and activists getting in the way. They're not coal mines. We're talking about a silver mine and a gold mine. Silver and gold are both critical to the renewable energy transition and the PM's so-called Future Made in Australia plan. The Bowden silver mine was to be located about 30 kilometres from Mudgee. It's the largest undeveloped silver project in Australia. In fact, it's one of the biggest globally. Last year, the New South Wales Independent Planning Commission approved the project. But on Friday, the New South Wales Court of Appeal ruled that the Planning Commission's approval was void and of no effect. But wait until you hear the reason. The ruling was based on concerns that the mine's 13-kilometre transmission line will have a negative environmental impact. So
Sorry.
It's not the mine itself that's the problem, it's the transmission line. The Court of Appeal has ruled a silver mine can't go ahead because the transmission lines will impact the environment. This is despite the fact that in order for the renewable transition to happen, transmission lines need to be built everywhere. We're told the project now has to go back to the beginning of the approvals process. It'll take years and cost millions. And that's why the project's share price tanked by 40% on the ASX on Friday afternoon. 50% of the world's silver is used for industrial applications, including solar panels, electronics and batteries. And demand for silver by solar panel manufacturers is forecast to increase almost 170% by 2030. But in New South Wales, we're shutting down silver mines and we're hurting the mum and dad investors who back them in. But there is hope because Chris Minns can step in. If Mr. Minns rules the mine is critical state significant infrastructure, the project won't have to go back to square one. A minister would make the calls instead of the bureaucrats. The second project that's been screwed over is the McPhillamys gold mine between Orange and Bathurst. It had all the federal and state government approvals, but out of nowhere, the Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek has stopped it. The minister has cited the cultural significance of a nearby river and ordered a dam to be moved. But when people press Tanya Plibersek to provide details of the cultural significance concerns, she's refused to say. The minister says it has been, quote, disclosed to her privately and must remain confidential due to cultural sensitivity, end quote. So an Indigenous activist can whisper in the Environment Minister's ear and have a $1 billion project cancelled. The gold mine was set to employ hundreds of people. It was set to pay tens of millions of dollars in taxes and royalties, but it's all been scuttled by secrets and cultural sensitivities. Good luck getting anything done in New South Wales. You can spend millions jumping through all the hoops. You think you're ready to go, but a court or a minister comes along and bursts the bubble.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I mean, how is anyone meant to invest in Australia at all when they see this sort of thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Look, when I was in Parliament, I was on the Economic Development Committee into greenfields mining in Victoria. Now, back in the 1850s, Victoria was a place to be for gold. We built our Parliament House from it, and lots of the infrastructure from gold. Now, successive governments, including particularly this one, want to shut down mining in a state that has plenty of gas. We're not talking about that today, but plenty of gas, plenty of coal, and yet we're putting ourselves into renewals all because this environment thing that's the religion of environment, the religion of climate change, that once again, it's the lefties who are pushing this thing. Plibersek is the Environment Minister, Labor Minister, and they're pushing this thing. And unfortunately, the Libs, our Conservatives, supposedly, are going further to the left as well.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, believe in climate change. If you need, if you want to do all these solar panels, the biggest one in Australia has just been approved today, you're gonna need silver, son. You know, best conductors of electricity as well is actually gold as well. And the idea that we're just neglecting that and we're so rich with it, it's just nuts.
But the hypocrisy is really crazy. 13, I mean, in order to do this net zero build out, you need 10,000 kilometers of new transmission lines. And if you give it a name, green, you slap the green on it, and you know the approvals seem to go through. You can run right through people's farmlands. You can run right through whatever Aboriginal place of cultural importance is, as long as you slap the right label on it. And it's insanity. It's one of those things. It's obviously not about what they say it's about, right? If it was about the cultural sensitivity, if it was about, being careful with land use, well, then it would be applied across projects. But it's not. And it lets you know that it's really not the game they say it is.
Well, this one here with the Minister Plebiscite is saying, trust me, I've got it on my phone. That's what she said, Joel.
Literally, I can't disclose it. It's sensitive.
But I have a text message, private text message.
Yeah.
And we'll make our decision on that.
Not credible.
Wow.
Not credible. Not remotely credible.
It's shocking. It's shocking because it's literally like, were you corruptly given money from this industry or that industry or XYZ? We have no idea. You've left it in the air. Well done.
The guys, the guys living in the Central West out in Blaney are really going to hurt it. And McPhillamys, where it was going to be, about 50, 100 kilometres west of Bathurst, Blaney's been shrinking for years. A lot of those towns out there have been shrinking for years if it's not a large regional centre. So McPhillamys would have been a real boost for them there. How that dispute actually ended up happening is even worse, because the Wiradjuri Traditional Owners Central West Aboriginal Corporation did not disagree with it. They had a neutral and had withdrawn their dispute, whereas the Orange Local Land Council was firmly against it. And you have these two corporations which claiming over the same piece of land. You have this fourth level of government, fifth level of government, which then you need to seek permission from, which is why McPhillamys didn't go ahead, despite what we're talking about, a short power line. The same day they approved Sun Cable, which was 800 kilometres. But these are the kind of issues that both Paul and I will be travelling past where McPhillamys was going to be to Central West in Oberon. We'll be driving straight past the site. Perhaps we should stop in and have a look, because that's where the people who live out there are so concerned, where Ian Plymer is going to be speaking and others, and they've got 150 people going to it because these projects like that, this gets cancelled, but they're going to have they're absolutely dotted with new windmills. Yeah, and that just enrages them. They need jobs, not just new windmills that come in by subcontractors that drive back out. And the transmission lines. And the transmission lines.
All for unreliable power.
Speaking of unreliable power, we've actually got another story from Facebook. So this is about reliable power and how we're being idiots in the fact that we have a massive percentage of the world, over a quarter of the world's uranium. And the idea that we're not using it. Facebook is removing pro-nuclear energy content. And we see this story specifically talking about Will Sheckle and Dick Smith, who they've been getting these complaints. Specifically, Nuclear for Australia has received 44 complaints from supporters who have had posts taken down. This is just yesterday. Since when did Meta get into that realm? It's no longer okay, you're not allowed to demonize these green energy things, but now it's like saying, okay, well, what about this? It's net zero. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. It's like.
Well, yeah, I mean, the unreliable power, wind and solar, it's never going to really get you to net zero. There are only two really practical ways to get you to net zero. And I'm not saying you should, honestly. I don't think you should. But nuclear, of course, doesn't have any carbon emissions. It gives you reliable baseload power over decades. The only other practical way to get to net zero, did you know that we export 200 million metric tons of thermal coal every year to Asia? We provide them with cheap, reliable energy, right? That's double the amount of energy we use every year. In Australia, I think we use 250 terawatts a year. So the only other way to get to net zero, other than nuclear, is to take the coal, half of it that goes to Asia, and you bring it right back into port, and then you got your net zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Climate Council, they complained in this particular article saying TikTok gave them a strike like us for integrity and authenticity for hitting out at the coalition's nuclear energy policy, basically taken. I mean, this is nuts, and they're completely skewing the debate. And it's like, well, who's funding you guys, basically? I just can't believe how weak our politicians have been on censorship. It really makes me aggressive.
The article says 44 times content's been removed, but all of them were technical. The response from Meta is that there was a technical issue. Come on.
How many grains of sand make a heap, as Tim rules?
I really don't think, Joel, just on that point where you mentioned about the government worried about censorship. I mean, we just talked about Tanya Peblesek before, who censored a text message for closing down a mine. She's showing no one. Why would she not close people who are opposed opposing views.
Selective enforcement is one of the primary weapons of the controllers, whoever they are, whoever actually runs the show, whoever actually runs the United States government. Clearly not Joe Biden. The selective enforcement of laws is the power.
Yeah, it makes me very homicidal because a lot of people on the right, they don't quite get it sometimes. They're like, let me give you an example. When 9/11 happened, the things that we have left over from that is a security state, it wasn't that big. It didn't exist as big at that time. And that is everywhere now. So we have anti-terror specific units for the whole word terror is a relatively new term. And the idea that now we've got terror forces and policing units is one thing. A more modern example is with a lot of these climate protesters that do receive money in America from Soros, but in Australia we see this as well. No one likes the climate protesters here. They find them as pests. They don't like that they shut down the traffic, the trains, and yet these people, they're driving additional powers being given to police and government. And people like us, we're cheering for it. Yeah, get them off and this and that. Okay, these people get off on bail, no worries. But the next time I want to do a protest for a time like COVID, maybe the next time, it's like throw him in jail. Throw him in jail. Preemptively as well. And that's
you may not have needed to post about it. They just need to ask you about it, and in an interview, come to a reasonable conclusion that you would host a event that may obstruct essential infrastructure. So they sit you down, and the way the interview goes, it won't be optional for you. So you'll have to have the interview, right? And you can have legal counsel with you, but that legal counsel, as these are phrased, you will need to try and explain: are you intending to host an unauthorized gathering that will block essential infrastructure? And if you are, and if they reasonably believe that, they may be able to use powers to detain you preemptively.
They have pre-crime laws here
for essential infrastructure.
I'll give you an example, not with the infrastructure, but with something else. During COVID, when I was in Sydney and I was in the western suburbs, there was a planned protest I was going to cover as a journalist in August 2021. And a week before, the police came to my house. They said, if you go within 5 kilometres of Victoria Park between 9 a.m. and I do believe 5 p.m., we'll throw you in jail for 5 years. So that made its way naturally to George Christensen and Mark Latham, who were talking about it privately. And they were saying, you mean to tell me if I want Jammal to come to Parliament House during those times, which falls within the 5Ks, he'll be thrown in prison for 5 years? And George said to him, yeah, that's right. So we do have that stuff. And by the way, where did those laws come from? A police officer told me, he said they use these laws to stop often bikies and gangs from meeting at certain times for certain things. So we didn't speak up for their rights, and now it's being applied to a journalist. And that's what I was doing. I was covering these protests like that. And it's like, whoa.
I actually think where the climate protesters blocked the bridge, she ended up having a 9-month custodial sentence. Yeah, okay, don't block essential infrastructure. I get that. I thought 9 months was a little bit too harsh for a first instance where she hadn't blocked essential infrastructure before. So those kind of essential infrastructure laws, I actually disagree with, even though it's like, yeah, get the greenies. Oh, not really.
I spoke up at the time and I said, guys, this is escalating things. A lot of these greenies, they're cashed up. They've got good people behind them. They get off by saying, well, they were very anxious about the climate crisis. Therefore, on mental health grounds, we'll let them go.
Green staffer Shoebridge, who went and vandalised Captain Cook, out of work hours though. It was okay. It wasn't during office hours. She wasn't in the Parliament actively graffitiing there. It was after work hours, so it was okay.
It's insane. Anyways, did anyone else have anything to add on that particular topic?
I agree with you there. When you make a law to the lowest common denominator, bikies, in that example, it does put the rest of us who want to gather for whatever reason into trouble, because the next government can say, right, okay, you Christians that are at church there, you're not going to go there anymore. You're not going to meet at home anymore. In fact, we'll ban a book and we'll also ban the Bible a few years later.
Yeah, that's right. You have to know how the laws are going to be applied against people who aren't popular, against you. And so, anytime you cheer something on, any form of authoritarianism or high sanctions, you always have to think, okay, well, what happens when this is going to come my way?
Yeah, they always use the exception as the rule. That's the problem. Yeah. So something like, online censorship is a different topic. They're like, well, we need you. Are you saying, Joel, that we should allow child pornography, doxing and incitement to violence on social media? It's like, no, But that's a big difference from me saying that maybe you shouldn't chop a child's genitalia off. That's, you know, but it's like, nah, if there's a 1% chance that the kid will commit suicide because you say that video, then you deserve to be nuked. And that's what's happening. That's why we're off TikTok now. I don't know who it was or what we said on here, but this is why a third of our views are actually coming from Rumble, Telegram, and X. If you're not following us there, click the link in the description because we are on Rumble right now. Moving on, next topic. The UK is trying to outdo Australia with regards to tyranny. This particular guy, End Wokeness, thank you for this video. Holy S. The UK is releasing 5k prisoners to make room for anti-migration protesters. Some of those will be violent offenders. I thought this was quite interesting.
So we will make sure that those people who need to be in prison will be in prison, not necessarily in the area where they live. They may be 200-300 miles away from home, but we will guarantee people a prison cell.
With the numbers are so tight there, how can you make that guarantee?
They are tight, and that's why we've initiated Operation Early Dawn. So basically the easiest way to describe it is 1 in, 1 out. So as people get released, we can then pick up people from police cells and take them to court, and we will triage that 3 times a day. We will guarantee a prison cell. We will make sure that those people who need to be in prison will be in prison, not necessarily in the area where they live. They may be 200-300 miles away from home, but we will guarantee people a prison cell.
Jeff, please. What are you thinking on that one?
My thinking is there. I did all those things you sent me. I watched, by the way, but it reminds me of when I was in Parliament. Someone who worked in Parliament, they weren't a politician, came to me and said, "Look, we need to jail those who we're afraid of, not those ones that we're mad at." So we jail the ones that we're afraid of, not the ones we're mad at. And there's plenty of people we're mad at. We were just saying before, you know, oh, yeah, great, get the bikies, get that. But when they come looking for you, that's something different. But certainly the ones we're afraid of. Are we afraid of anti-immigration people? Well, clearly the left are, because the narrative of the left, that they don't like that rhetoric.
It's a political position you should be allowed to have. I mean, you know, who gets let into the country is something that a representative democracy, this should be an open discussion. You know, the idea that you would be censured for quite a legitimate political discussion is completely beyond the pale. This is the home of the Enlightenment, the home of the Magna Carta. You know, this completely antithetical to the fundamental values of Western civilization. How quickly this has happened, how quickly it's fallen. 1984 becoming an instruction manual as opposed to a warning. I actually am stunned. I mean, I really, wow, I do not live in the world I thought I lived in.
Someone commented in the comments, I killed a man, and the big guy says to the smaller guy, and he says, I posted a meme about UK immigration. And that's, it is, you're right. It's the place of the Magna Carta. What the hell went wrong?
I really don't know.
What's that leftist thinking? I always bring it back down. People have turned away from God, and they've filled that void with other religions. They filled it with climate change. They filled it with more wokeism. They filled it with transgenderism. All these voids that they've left.
But and who comes into your country should be a topic that the people who live in that country and the citizens of that country should have a say over. I mean, that's one of the fundamental things that you should be able to discuss and have an opinion. Same thing with your home. Who comes into your home, that's a discussion to be had. But the idea of, it's completely upside down, and I can't really make sense of it.
No.
Elon Musk's response to this was civil war is inevitable, which the European Commission is very unhappy about. Yep. I actually worry less about this rising to be a boiling conflict of street battles and what have you, and say, what if it's not? Like, imagine a situation where you look at a situation where violent criminals are released because someone swore who is Alan. What if in a situation where simply for gesticulating at police, a 78-year-old man was given a 2-year sentence within 48 hours of the offence, but the murderer of the 3 girls and six injured won't see trial until mid-next year? What if all of this actually doesn't have an effect, does not radicalise people at home into oh, this isn't something that we can just kind of hum and ha about. What if people accept and go, this is fine? That is far more worrying, also from a financial perspective, because everyone who's pushing these social left issues are also pushing economic left issues of let's borrow the bank away. This will devalue, this will not just affect you in a kind of cultural way, this will affect you in a financial way, in every single way that you can kind of fathom. This isn't something that can be isolated. As long as you get enough money and isolate yourself to the top of the pile, you'll be okay. Anyone viewing this is not 0.01%. You're not a billionaire, and $1 million won't be enough to put a wall high enough to keep a South African future out.
Yeah. To make matters worse, they're expanding the definition of terrorism. Extreme misogyny is going to be included into that. This comes from Mario Nafal. He made the point that extreme misogyny is going to be treated as terrorism. Extreme misogyny will be classified that under new UK government plans. UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has ordered a review of counter-terrorism strategies to address violence against women and girls, focusing on gaps in current legislation and emerging ideologies. I do believe under emerging ideologies it goes on to actually say that and those that follow Andrew Tate and subscribe to Andrew Tate should also be included. And by the way, let's not forget what we covered last week. We covered the story of the fact that the police commissioner there was saying we will extradite US citizens if we need to our country. I'm a fan of Andrew Tate. What, you're going to extradite another Syrian to your country? I mean, seriously. I mean, the idea that they're pushing this is nuts.
But I thought that misogyny was the new Olympic sport, wasn't? Isn't that the? So how can it be a punishable offence?
I didn't even know what it was until Julia Gillard said that about Tony Abbott. Seriously, I did not know these new words that come out.
Yeah,
I did not know. I even forgot what pronoun was from when I was back in grade 3, learning all your adjectives and nouns and pronouns, and then all of a sudden it's become pronouns. I didn't know what misogynist was. I had to refresh on pronouns and all the other, all my other grammar.
The academics, and that's funny, isn't it? You hear them and you see them with their coloured hair before you actually come across them and meet them, and it's like, okay, thank you for identifying yourself, so my children can avoid you. But that's the thing. Like, it is an academic class. They use big and convoluted and You'll never catch me saying the word quintessential to an audience. You'll never catch me doing that because that's not how people talk. It's just not.
That's right.
Unless you're maybe in a boardroom and you're trying to play some games. But I just can't believe what's going on to the UK. And I think there are a lot of British experts that have been on this show. They are shocked, and they're just thankful that they've come here. And we saw that with the migration patterns of millionaires leaving the country. They're all coming to places like Australia, the UAE, and they're looking for a better life. You know, Australia is a net gainer of over 2,000 millionaires to this country, many of which from the UK.
But every one of the homes that they buy denies one to most Australians. We're competing with the world's richest for houses and the world's poorest for jobs.
That's right.
To the extreme misogyny is an example of an Overton window shift. And not credit, but Keir Starmer, these are some big moves. Never let a crisis go to waste. He's using these. He's using this public disorder. He is using them to push extreme misogyny, to jail thousands of protesters. When he took the knee to BLM. When BLM was happening, what is he doing? He took the knee, he posted the photo, and he was there with Angela Rennie taking the knee to BLM along with the Met. This is a clear demonstration of hierarchy. But we shouldn't be that surprised with where UK Labour were. I am surprised that the Conservatives, where's the big resistance to it? You're the opposition. You should, the default to any new policy the government makes is just to oppose. Conservatives like, law and order.
The Conservatives clearly haven't been representing conservative values in the UK for a long time. The Tories have given themselves over to the globalists a long time ago. That they tried. Theresa May tried to stab Brexit in the back. And then finally, when the plan she had, which was no Brexit at all, was shown, they got Boris Johnson in, but they still had, the unrestricted immigration that was one of the things that the people didn't want. It's really clear that people aren't being represented. Not, and especially, in the UK and Australia, the Conservatives are not being represented at all either. In the U.S., we do have, possibly a populist nationalist coalition that might be taking over the Republican Party. You know, the pro-war activists seem to be on the dissent in the Republican Party, and you know, this concept of populists represent the people in the country, and nationalists represent the place that you are in control of. You know, that idea is revolutionary to the controlled so-called conservative parties in most of the West.
Europe shows the way. Swedish Democrats, they managed to achieve not quite a majority, but we have seen net emigration from Sweden for the first time. Emigration. It had to have one of the highest murder rates in Europe to achieve that, and for rapes to increase 20-fold over the past 15 years, and for 318 grenade attacks to occur in 2019.
Yeah, I think they had to call them pineapple attacks. Pineapple? Because they didn't want the word grenade to get out, so they called them. There was a pineapple that went off, and I mean, the funny thing is, I'm half Swedish. I know I don't look it. Half Swedish, half from Ecuador. The Ecuadorian half has the indigenous side, right? So, like, I'm a blend between colonizer and colonized. Colonish. There you go. So I mean, my mom was fully Swedish, and I've been there a number of times. The idea, somehow people stopped valuing their own culture, right? And you know, they had that Swedish air service, their airline that said, "Oh, you know, we don't actually have a culture." Bull crap. You know, the culture that created Sweden was, you know, the hard work, and it was one of the safest places for women in the world 20 years ago. And now, you know, with the unrestricted immigration without integration, that's sort of the key difference. It's like, oh, you know, we have to adapt to you. It's not for you to adapt to us. And then your society isn't at all like it once was.
Makes me homicidal. You know, Twitter is where it's at. There are so many videos, great videos out there of the truth of what's going on, and it's ugly. I was watching one video the other day, a Italian girl, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous girl, and she's in tears on camera. She's talking about how she was sexually assaulted by a couple of migrants, and if it wasn't for a taxi guy pulling across the road, she's certain she would have been raped. Another one, I was looking at Sweden. There was an article about Sweden. It was saying we're on track for 1 in 4 women to basically be sexually assaulted or raped in the country. It's like
this again is the false compassion, right? And it's the idea. Oh, we need to be compassionate to people far away, but you know, this lands typically on, you know, the weak and the poor in the country that you're supposed to be represented by, you know, and so, you know, who it lands on is the victimized are the people we should have compassion for, our neighbors, you know, the people in our country. But instead, this false compassion of, you know, and just letting unrestricted immigration without any attitude towards integration, just it creates no safe place for the weak people in your country.
This might be a question for women, and I will be getting more women on the show very soon, but the real question for me is, I thought you guys want safety, you know, financial, physical, you like the strong man. Why do you vote for open borders? Because that's what your people are believing. Are you just, you know, I mean, this whole thing about Kamala as a case study in the US. I mean, you could not have a better dichotomy between strong borders and weak borders. Kamala was the border czar, and she did jack crap on the topic. And she's all for open borders. She's no worries. She presides over it she's the second in command. She's a heartbeat away from the president. She's done nothing on this. How is it the majority of women in America are voting left wing? And I have no doubt that's not going to change.
I think Paul said it. He said they ride on compassion. So women are seen as more emotional, more compassionate. And maybe that links in, Paul, with what you were saying, that they then take that compassion
weaponized against them.
And all of a sudden there's a conundrum between, well, hang on, we're looking after refugees and people who are coming in, and oh my gosh, but they're raping us, or they're They're doing the other things that you mentioned or Chris was mentioning through Sweden. And I think that's a conundrum. But I agree with you that women need to, well, we all do, look what's going on with your mind instead of your emotions.
One of the other things is the news channel echo chamber that doesn't show a lot of the things that that happen. So, you know, if you are, you know, in a particular political ideology, pretty much most people watch news that confirms their pre-existing bias. But the left-wing news studiously avoids reporting on the negative consequences of the policies that they promote. You know, and so, you know, I remember there was a Swedish case where they said, oh, you know, if you see this man, this person has just committed a terrible violent crime, but his face was blurred out because you didn't want to stoke animus against the person you want to be compassionate to. So it's like, oh yeah, so if I see, you know, a blurry, you know, square, that's the one. That you know, get that guy.
So Joel's question about safety. Safety to you as a man is different to safety as a woman. She cannot, mostly women do not seek safety in a policing sense. They seek safety in conformity. And this isn't a question about me. ASCH, the ASH conformity tests, conformity. We all conform in different ways. Most of us here, if we're in this space, we don't tend to conform and struggle to understand how safety equals conformity, but it does. And that's where you get the Kamala coming from, because what you're seeking is to fit in a feeling of safety. The hard-edged reality of it, it's difficult for most women because there's a big difference between genders. Oh my God, is that sexism? In how that's achieved. And the idea of presenting to most women, here is a firearm that keeps your border safe. Oh, that just doesn't fit in. But here is a warm woman offering you a cup of tea with Reese Witherspoon as a marmalade. Well, that feels great. That's safety.
Yeah, look, again, I'm going to stop it there with the woman chat. Guys, we're going to actually do a dedicated podcast at some point with the on the topic of feminism. I've got a lot of guests that want to actually tackle that, a lot of women that want to really get their claws in on that topic, which I think is excellent because feminism is destroying the West in many different ways. And going back to the topic of immigration and everything, the guy that stopped the boats, Tony Abbott, in trying to get the Liberal Party back on track, he's called for Don Harwin's resignation over the New South Wales council election debacle. Just to jog your memory again, last week we covered the story of how there were some almost 150 candidates that were not actually submitted their forms as candidates in New South Wales, 53 of which were sitting councillors for the Liberal Party. Now, when you're a candidate for the Liberals, you're not allowed to actually submit that form yourself. It's got to be done by HQ. So in New South Wales, it's Sydney. There were a lot of candidates that could have perfectly done it themselves, gotten it done, had peace of mind, know it's done, but no. In New South Wales HQ, they were meant to do it and they didn't do it. Don Harwin and one other was responsible for that, and he has refused to resign. And in fact, Tony Abbott and many others have basically been calling for his head as a result. Sorry, that's 140 candidate forms and 48 sitting councillors. In terms of the size of the debacle, there are some that are saying that this is the biggest debacle with regards to administrative things happening in political parties. Jeff, have you seen anything like this?
Well, clearly he needs to be sacked. If he's not resigning, you sack him. Or if he's elected, he needs to be taken out. For that to happen, there's not too many more important jobs. You've got an election cycle that comes around, whether that's council, state, federal. Here it's New South Wales. There's a council elections coming up. Have we got all the boxes ticked? That one box. Have you got that one box ticked? No.
Could it be any clearer that the Liberal rank and file are not being represented by their executive? It can hardly be any clearer. You know, how much can they get kicked by their executive before they do more?
Well, as much as that person's not doing his job here in New South Wales, the Liberal Party opposition in Victoria are not doing or representing their people either. I think they're just happy to sit in opposition. They're not ticking any box down there. Just like this guy, the executive. You need to have a strong team. You need a strong executive, and you need strong people on the ground as the face. So you need the back room and you need the front face.
And not just a strong face, but almost someone who actually represents the values of the rank and file of the party, as opposed to these captain's picks and not representing the values of the party.
Yeah, that's probably what I meant by having that strong.
Kind of strength. That's a good kind of strength. Yeah,
you're right. You're calling on them to resign, and again to remind everyone, Jeff Shaw is a former member of the Victorian lower house. And so you know internally how the Liberal Party is meant to work, and I have no doubt you'd be demanding this. This guy probably would have resigned back when you were serving, straight away if this happened in Victoria. It kind of reminds me of when the Secret Service head didn't want to resign immediately, and it's like you have one job: protect the president.
Yeah. Would Michael Kroger really have resigned in this situation? Would he have?
He wasn't.
As a personality, though, would Kroger have?
I think he would have been so embarrassed that it just wouldn't have happened. But I think he would have been so embarrassed and he would have been pushed because no one would be.
He wouldn't blame someone else and be like, "Oh,
it could be. He could very well have been.
My fault. What could you do?"
Could very well have been.
Sorry.
But he could have been voted out the next election.
Former Victorian Liberal president.
Oh no, I know Kroger. I was just going to say, the argument they were saying, one of the excuses was one of the other guys, not Don Harwin, the other guy. He was saying that the reason this happened is because we thought the cutoff was 5 p.m. not 12 p.m. I'm like, you mean to tell me you would have submitted 150 forms in 5 hours?
Maybe the day before. Maybe the week before. What? Ridiculous.
It makes me homicidal, and that's the thing. There are a lot of people. One of the guys, he was in a very winnable seat. He was going to be and guys, these are mostly these are conservative guys that were going to run, guys and gals. And the idea that they're not in that earlier story about the treaties, do you think there's more or less opposition to that? And that's not including all the other stuff with regards to, how these councils approve certain developments in your area, the smart city stuff, everything.
Incompetence or malfeasance, what do you think?
Exactly. And also, I mentioned last week, often, the way George Soros has taken over America, he buying off and engaging a lot of these district attorneys. And the reason why there's so much crime on the streets is he gets involved in local and council elections and with these DA elections. Now, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, they often bleed their candidates, train their candidates, experience them in local, then they move to state, then they move to federal. That's how Mark Latham got his start. He started. Well,
certainly, the Labor and the Greens certainly have that as their fan base, as their starting ground. It's a cesspool of leftism. Is councils, and not many people of conservative values used to go in because they were busy working, they were busy doing things, worrying about family, worrying about business. Whereas these others that had a more of a political persuasion, they took an interest in politics, so more leftist stuff. They came in and wanted those roles.
Yeah, so an entire generation's wiped out. The gateway to get elected at the next election lies in New South Wales, Queensland and WA at this stage. That's where the majority of the seats are that Liberal needs to win. And all these guys that would be getting all this public funding from rates and, they would be well-tuned. And, I mean, I wouldn't blame it if the majority of them are turned off now. I mean, this is a massive, massive debacle.
Even a little bit more than the funding is they get their face out there as well.
So what are you doing for me sort of thing?
Yeah. So they'd be in the local paper, so they'd be getting known more locally. They'd be out there. They'd have the Liberal member or the Conservative member beside them on a lot of things as well, leading up to elections.
And Don Harwin wasn't elected, how do I say this, in a way that was transparently clean. Is that?
I have no idea. But
I've been awash in leaks this week from different people. But the one person who has been willing to put his name to it, former state executive member for the Libs, Carl Kratasi, he's always said for a while, since he got expelled from the party, which was about 6 months ago, along with Cameron Zuli on that night, he said that it's irretrievable, cannot be reformed. And I thought it was a bit of hyperbole because, when that kind of breakup happens, you're like, you're upset. But surely they'll come around. They'll lose. They'll reform themselves. They lose the state election. They'll come around. But I saw this and went, he's right. This is irredeemable. Maybe this rot really is that deep that you need to go all the way to President beyond Keane. It's that deep that maybe it does face a UK-level Conservatives wipeout before they turn the corner. Maybe he's right.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And to make matters worse, we're seeing this massive civil war heat up. We've got Tony Abbott basically blowing up the ship there by saying, look, this is not on. This is not how we run the ship. I'm a statesman and this is not what we used to do. But in Victoria, now looking at Victoria, what's the Victorian state government doing? They're actually put an agreement forward where public servants will be given almost like a bonus, a one-off $5,600 payment, lump sum, pretty much no questions asked. I mean, Jeff, what's this all about?
Well, there is no questions asked. But once again, I know it's disappointing for many of us around here, but it shouldn't be surprising that Labor overspend. They're really... I mean, I don't know why they need to give it to the public servants. The public servants are already going to vote for Labor. We have 10% of our working population...
It's a buy-off.
...is a public servant. This is going to cost... There's over 350,000, 360,000 people who work for government in Victoria. I don't think all 360 are going to get that payment. I think it's just particularly the public. But there's over 50,000. That's nearly $300 million that's going...
I guess the word that comes to my mind is shameless. What comes to yours?
Incompetence. Even more, it's shameless could be the one. I relate to someone who's got a credit card or a kid that has all this money, goes into a lolly store and just spends whatever they want. But they have a bottomless pit of money, but they don't. Because when I was in 2014, the state debt was $20 billion. $22 billion was state debt 10 years ago. It's now $168 billion.
No respect for OPM, other people's money.
Yeah. Well, if it's other people's, then you spend more of it. I mean, that's what I've found.
But crazy things when you've got that spending mentality, they've got to spend on something. I was saying to Chris before, they dig holes. They dig in all these tunnels and dig in all these holes, and no one's seen anything yet. Yes, they will. But in typical style, it's over budgeted, not just in money but in time as well. I mean, if you've got people there who are flicking signs as stop and go people, someone that I know personally told me he's on 180,000 last year. 180,000 for flicking signs. That's about what a lower house member gets paid, politician. It's about what a principal at school gets paid. And Paul, then people get a bit of the green eye and they say, hey, I'm a nurse. I'm not getting $180,000. I need that $180,000. Well, no, you're getting paid pretty well. That person's getting paid far too much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's insane.
Insanity.
And I think one of the main, I guess two things, accountability and transparency are two things I want infinitely more of. And I would think that if more people knew that, if that was more transparent, so much nonsense would stop.
In that book you're holding up, I've got a chapter called Debt, actually. Every chapter starts with D.
Yeah, I like that.
Chapter 666 is called Devil Dan, so if you like that one. But I can't remember what chapter Debt is. But
I've actually went straight to it. So, guys, this is Jeff Shaw's actual book. Again, accounting background, former MP. He's not just some guy on the street that actually wrote a book. Knows what he's talking about. Now, this is about Dan Andrews' Unmasked. Every chapter starts with a D with regards to the Dan Andrews theme. And in the Debt, chapter 15, Debt and Dollars chapter, he has two quotes. One from a favourite of mine, Thomas Sowell. But the first one's from American libertarian journalist and political satirist, P.J. O'Rourke. It's a popular delusion that the government wastes vast amounts of money through inefficiency and sloth. Enormous effort and elaborate planning are required to waste this much money. And this one from Thomas Sowell, economist and historian in America. The real goal should be to reduce government spending rather than balanced budgets achieved by rising tax rates to cover ever-rising spending.
That has never been said in Parliament before by the Labor Party. Really, to reduce spending, what? Why? When we can tax you more. We can throw on maybe a death tax. We could throw on all these. A great one here that they had in Victoria. If we rezone your area from rural to, say, residential, you as a landowner have got a big win. We want half of that now. We want half of that now. If you keep it, that's fine. But we want half of that now.
It's nuts. And this is brilliant. You really got to check this particular book out. Is this on Amazon?
I didn't go Amazon, but you can get it at danandrewsunmasked.com.au.
Okay, please, because there's an excellent...
I just bought it.
There's some.
I literally just bought it right there. I just bought it right now.
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, did you get it from Amazon?
No, I do it from your site.
Oh, from my site. I was,
Check that with the credit card.
how much?
cool. I was going to give you one, but
Nah, just fine. Let's do it. Let's go.
was gonna
Let's
say,
go.
how-
No, good work should be rewarded, and I bought it.
No, it's brilliant. Just reading in chapter 15, they've got some phenomenal headlines. It goes through the budget 2022, but more interestingly, for someone like me, and we've talked about this before a couple of years ago, I was saying I need to upskill my knowledge on economics and everything. How to turn a AAA credit rating into a AA rating.
you don't need much education for that, though, Joel.
Yeah.
You just spend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get the feeling if I read this book, I'll have a better education than most ministers.
I would say so. Yes,
Right.
because most of them are brought up through the union.
Yeah.
Some of them through council, but a lot of them through the union. And they, when I was in Parliament, only one of the opposition had a business, and she was a director of her husband's business. All right, so she wasn't. It was just there when there used to be $2 companies and maybe too lazy to go to a $1 company. One on the Labor side in business.
Specifically on pay rises, if I may mention. So, again, you might be like, Joel, let's play devil's advocate. $5,600, it's tough. The government's leading the way. There's a cost of living crisis. Victoria was the most locked down state in the world. Hang on a sec. Everything is about context. And this is why this book is important, and because the internet's being censored, whereas this is forever. Dan Andrews has a history of giving a lot of pay rises. For example, almost a 10% increase in public service wages were given in May 2021. And this the public service has grown by over 18,700 people in 2021 in the Victoria Public Service. Guys, what is it, like the biggest growing sector in the
I think it certainly is. And one thing I say to people is the government, they suck resources out of human resources. Human resources. Because if you can get $180,000 flicking a sign for a government build, if you're
why would you produce something?
Yeah, or if you're even a barista or something like that, which we have a lot of in Melbourne, why would you be getting $50,000 a year? Let's go do it 3 times that much and flick a sign. So they suck resources out, and they're doing this big build. So they're sucking tradies out of the economy. So if you and I want our lights done or something like that, all of a sudden it's going to cost us 1.5, 2 times what it was the year before, because they're getting paid that on government jobs.
So they're sucking out the human capital,
yes,
the financial capital
by spending, yes,
right, and then also on the and then reducing incentives through taxation.
Yes,
if you have a higher tax bill, you have a lower incentive to produce. And then they're rewarding one of the sectors that was not harmed during the lockdown. I'm pretty sure the public sector got paid during lockdowns. The businesses that got destroyed, I'm pretty sure that the government got to work from home or got paid.
Yeah, correct. Because they were essential workers.
So where is the correct compassion should be delivered to?
Yep.
I think I've said this before on the show. I think we need to build a wall, across the border of New South Wales and Victoria.
Maybe.
I mean,
would you let me in though? I'd like to be able to.
There's a closing window. Look, the way look, it'll be New South Wales Welshman building wall, so it'll go a lot quicker than Victoria. No, but look, seriously, like because we look at what's going on in America with regards to, the purpling of Texas due to a lot of people from California moving across. It's like, you need to leave those ideas there, guys. You need to leave those ideas there, because what's happening is this will translate into it's a factory of these bad ideas around the country.
Yes, it is.
And you know that because you see it happening with California. California and Victoria have got a lot in common. Their leaders are relatively charismatic when it comes to dealing with the press's questions. Honestly, the number one question I was asked about Dan Andrews in the pandemic, everyone said it. And it's not like they were talking to each other. They'd say, how is he still alive? Yeah. I'm like, what are you saying? What are you saying?
Well, people said that to me as well. But
what do they mean by that? I'm naive. Can someone please explain it to me? Like, I don't know what
with all the pain that he was causing people.
Yeah.
Why didn't someone take him out is what they're basically saying.
That makes sense. But the idea that, because I was looking, my phone is a walking documentary of what happened to Victoria. But the idea that people wished death upon the guy, like, they never said that about Gladys. And it's not, she didn't do nothing. She did targeted lockdowns of southwest Sydney, which targeted the ethnic people in Sydney. Like, it wasn't nothing. But they called her this word and that word, the C word, the B word, but they never said that. But with him, people in New South Wales and around the country and in Victoria said, I just don't know how he's still alive. And it's like, what do you mean?
But they voted him back in, though.
They did
right?
vote him back
Which
in,
is like Stockholm syndrome to the max.
It was crazy. So it must have, it was only a few people that was actually saying that, because you're right. He got voted back in, not with less people either, by the way.
Yeah.
Not with less seats.
Inexplicable.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. And that's thanks to, partly the preference whisperer, Glenn Drury, who is a funny guy. Moving to another former premier, Mark McGowan is on his 5th job after retiring. The man that led most of the world with regards to lockdowns. He was one of the first and was hailed by a number of countries, including, I do believe, Tucker Carlson for his early lockdown as well, before Tucker Carlson realised what was going on. So he's taken up another job with regards to an energy company, which is quite interesting, obviously being a heavy industry state. I haven't sent this round to you guys because it's literally dropped. It's not a Ukrainian company, no. I guess this is a wider question without, obviously you guys hadn't looked through this yet, this just came out now. Is there a problem with regards to people moving from the public sector to the private sector and then leveraging their connections to get things done? And, I mean, Jeff, I guess this is probably for you as well.
Look, I think I never got any cushy jobs like that, let me tell you. At all.
Yeah.
In fact, I've worked for myself most of my life. But I think you build up through your life networks. And I think sometimes you call on those networks. You just do. Why would I, if I knew a mechanic who I knew did a good job, why wouldn't I ring him instead of going to somebody else? Or if I needed help on something, why wouldn't I go to a person that I know? So as much as it...
Can I give you an example? Because I think specifics, when it's specific. So ScoMo, he negotiates the AUKUS agreement and then he gets a job with one of the UK entities that are doing that. I mean, that sort of thing. And this is worse in America, by the way.
It icks me. It icks me. But at the same time, we were talking before about if you bring a law in, where does that stop? Can I not talk to anyone that I knew in Parliament or anyone I knew before Parliament?
Yeah.
So as much as that feeling of, I don't like that, jobs for the boys, well...
Yeah, it's a hard thing. How do you codify it? I mean, you can think that something should be illegal, but then you have to write a law that applies to this, specific situation you're trying to deal with, and not be overly broad or capture things that it shouldn't. But the revolving door is clearly a problem. I mean, if you sell out your own people, you can land a cushy job right afterwards. If you're, inside the narrative of, in terms of, I mean, it could be in any industry. You're good, and it also happens not just with the politicians, but with the regulators. The FDA. It's called regulatory capture. Is the term for it. The revolving door. It's much cheaper for any large company to pay off a regulator than it is to make your product 10% better. You know what I mean? So if your regulator or your politician is for sale, that is the cheapest ROI. That is the cheapest return on investment you can get, as long as there isn't something that stands in the way.
And I think what you were saying, Joel, with if there's been a big contract signed, then you leave and you're instrumental in it, and then you leave and go join an associate or that group, I think that's clearly something's, you've used public money and bought yourself a job a good job in the future. But I was talking more on that networking side of things. Where do you draw the line? You've built up people, you've built up contacts, you've met them at meetings.
Well, I think while you're in government, like if you can't buy someone a mug, right? But once they leave the government, and sometimes there's cooling off periods. Excuse me, like could be 6 months or whatever else. But sometimes that's worth the wait. So there's
some people, if I may say, were saying that I was talking to one guy the other day, my uncle. He was basically making the point that, look, Joel, maybe it needs to be a bit more like Singapore. What is Singapore? 8-10 years. There was a guy that brought that in and said, look, I can get the country back on track, but I need time. This is my vision. If you commit to that, that's what I'll do. And he did that. Now, looking back at what's going on in Australia, my uncle was making the point quite intelligently, in my opinion. He was saying, look, Joel, the problem with a 3-year term on a federal level, even on a state level 4 years, is by the time you've gone around repaying everyone that donated to your campaign, you know, and maxed out and whatever, you don't know, you're already trying to get ready for the next election. Whereas if you have a lot longer of a period of time, a bit like some of these Asian countries, then you're actually able to do something for your country. But one of the things I'm trying to do, and you know, this isn't just about complaining, there's a lot of activism we do with our projects and the Ark projects, is we trialled something in the Victorian election, you might remember, Jeff, was we had the transparency reports where you put your address in and it tells you your MP and it tells you their sins. Tells you their voting record on how they voted in Hansard, and it tells you some of the outside Parliament things that were reported in newspapers and everything with regards to what they've been up to. I think we need more of that, and there's actually nothing, to my shock, in Australia like that, so that's what we're doing. But I think people being made aware of it, if they then go and vote for that MP anyway, it's like, as long as it's consensual. I just wanted you to know that that's what he's done. That's it. You know?
Some like Australian Christian Lobby, I think at one stage did, when it came to abortion, who voted for abortion, who didn't, and on Christian issues or family issues. But you're talking more a detailed
everything
on issues.
Yeah, basically. So like this is the turning point policy matrix. This is economic, where I stand on economics, on health, on freedom, on democracy, and lockdowns and everything. And there's like 25 questions. Now, who are the MPs that voted either in your favour or against you? So your MP will come up for your area of, you know, Mulgrave, Dan Andrews, and the list is as long as your arm, basically. Yeah. These are all the wrong things that he did. These are the good things that he did. There really weren't that many. Like the permanent pandemic bill that allowed him to suspend elections if he chose. Stuff like that would be on the negative. And when you click that, it takes you to the resource. That's the sort of crazy thing I built, because there's something missing. We just need more information.
Jeff, you're a former member of Parliament. You've written a book on Daniel Andrews. I want to ask you to give Daniel Andrews, out of the public purse, $1 million. And every other MP as well, the same thing, with a catch. No lobbying, no private sector jobs connected to any contract in future. It's all, you're an accountant, it's all small business from then on out. But you get $1 million a year. Every MP, including you, for that matter, gets $1 million a year. We close that revolving door. But we burden the Parliament with close on $250 million a year just to lock these people off. And if you got caught, I don't know, public lashings. Okay, maybe not that far, but 20 years jail. Severe breaches for that.
Chris, that's why many years ago they used to have a pension. They used to have a pension in Parliament. So when you left, if you'd spent, I think it was 3 terms, and we used to have 3-year terms back then, not 4. So if you did 9 years or you got into your 3rd term, you'd get a pension after that. That stopped in 2004, state-wise, because it came out in, Mark Latham actually came out and he said, Howard, you're not closing down this government pensions. This is a rort, da-da-da. Howard came out, shut it straight away, go, from now on, anyone after 2002 federally doesn't get a pension.
Yeah.
So if you joined after 2002, bad luck.
Yeah.
And then the states, Victoria followed suit in 2004. So
will you support giving the man who locked Victoria down for 230 days $1 million?
No chance. I mean, he's getting his pension anyway, but he was before that 2002. But he has to give $1 million for the rest of his life and 1,000 generations.
Other way. Well, I think that could hard to get bipartisan support for that.
I think the problem with that is once we start going down the route of, that was a good try, by the way. I think once because you brought that up on the second show, I think. When you start going down that route...
Did you get a good answer?
No, well, it was okay. It was okay.
He got sympathy from me. He did get sympathy from me, because I've heard that from some people. But the problem is, and it's trying to stop lobbying, and I get it. But the problem is, the words of the founding fathers in America come to mind. You can't govern an immoral people. Now, if we start cutting deals with terrorists per se, or the devil, then I think that we're starting to be like compromising our values. And it's like, I personally, in the early days of Australia, especially New South Wales, it was only landowners that could be of the house of the upper house of New South Wales, because they were the only ones that had enough money to do it as a service. They weren't getting money out of it. It was as a service to the country. And I do believe there were 12-year terms for the upper house of New South Wales, not 8-year, which is what we have now.
I'll keep going beyond that. Rhodesia was not segregationist. You could be a member of parliament, vote, black, white, coloured, whatever it was. It was not racist in its way. You just needed to own land. So it wasn't discriminatory in that way. Despite the view of it as a racist country, it wasn't. South Africa went down a much more racist, we're going to put a pencil through your hair and see if it can fall out and what have you. So there is something to it. There is something to there is something to it in the colorblind. You have a stake in the future. JD Vance's view is: do you have kids?
Yeah.
Do you have kids? You've got skin in the game now. There's got to be something that filters out the suicidal element of societies, which will always be there. We try and look at the left, the Victorian socialists, and that, and like, oh, they're suicidal. That will always exist. But how do you not end up setting up or kind of going down very violent paths?
There was a interesting video which I was looking at. Don't bring it up just yet, Rami. But Rami sent me a fascinating video on Vietnam and what they were doing over there. I don't have it in front of me. But essentially the video was saying that, look, you're not allowed to actually own land here if you're not married and a part of, we fought against communism. We fought against this. We fought against that. Like, we have built and spilt blood over this land, and you can't just come in here and take it. And I was like, that's Pauline Hanson in a Vietnamese, skin. I was like, and that's right. And why is it that they demonize Pauline Hanson and people like that say, my language and my basket's been murdered and this and that? And when I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, why is it there's a reality that the rest of the world operates on, the third world, the second world, but the first world doesn't?
Long way to get into that. Why is it? Why are we Western disease, white, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic, weird? Have you heard those before? The West is weird. You got a lot to get through.
Yeah, we don't have time. Speaking of which, in the USA, Kamala Harris has chickened out of a debate with Donald Trump. She has been nominated. The Democratic National Party convention's just taken place, and we've seen a funny situation where there's been a few amusing videos, which I won't play because some of them are quite cruel. But we've seen the TikTok generation try to get out the vote for young people. But Kamala, she's not going to debate Donald Trump, and she's been avoiding press conferences and taking questions from the press in America. And it really is quite astonishing this week, and I'm curious what you have to say on this, Paul. They didn't have a situation where they had a primary. In previous elections, they had a proper primary. And even then, they were it was subverted. But how do you feel about your country, where one of the only two major parties you could become president didn't even hold one?
It's absurd. This is the Democratic Party, and they're putting as the front and center the person who has had no primary votes. So Joe Biden clearly wasn't running the show for a long time, and so whoever the puppeteers are, they basically got Biden passed the primaries. He got all the primary votes, and then one day he woke up and found out that that he's been taken out. Even the New York Times, Maureen Dowd, who's a long-established person in the New York Times, wrote an article. I think she was something like, a coup is still a coup. He got. It's kind of from the old Soviet days. You'd go off to the dacha and you'd come back and you'd find you're no longer, the premier anymore, whatever I forgot what they called it during the Soviet days. Biden gets sick with COVID, gets out of bed a couple of days later and finds out he's no longer the front of the ticket. And that's the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Did you guys have any thoughts on this particular question, or?
I have no interest in her at all, actually.
Right.
I certainly have interest in Donald Trump winning again.
Very good. And that's why I put you on the Trump hat sides. Very good. I really have to ask my guests for consent because it appears on the show behind them.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't let me put one on.
Oh, you're welcome to don one now. I was going to say, on this particular topic, it's kind of crazy that, the Democratic Party allowed this subversion of democracy to happen when a Kennedy was running. Because it was shaping up really well. And he was getting a lot of grassroots support before any of this happened. And they just completely subverted they snookered Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even want to give him Secret Service protection, except maybe he would have been safer without it. I don't know. But moving on from this particular story, we are going to keep covering the US election. But the last story I wanted to cover, I can't do it on YouTube because it is going to get me banned. So if you want to click the link in the description, if you're on YouTube right now, on any of the accounts there, click the link below, join me on Rumble. We've got a lot of good people there that I'm about to quickly take some questions on. The topic is on Alison Langdon winning a Logie Award, and we're about to talk about the jab and that time that she went after Craig Kelly. And I don't want the internet to forget that, because it was very disrespectful. She never apologized, and she's without honor and dignity, in my opinion, and the idea that she's being celebrated as a journalist, as the number 2 silver medal journalist with regards to presenting and breaking the news, it's just like, what the hell? And again, this isn't just me as a competitor going after her. It's about honor, and it's about actually setting it right. I'm a Christian. I believe you can ask for forgiveness, but no apology has been made to Craig Kelly. So, Rami, if you don't mind just cutting YouTube now, and just give me the nod when we're...
Give me a second.
No worries. You just have to go to Vimeo and then turn them off, and that's it.
One of the things we could talk about, the Democratic National Convention, they figured out how to build a wall and how to check for ID.
Yeah, right.
Around the convention.
Oh yeah, that's right. They erected a wall.
They cannot do that at the border.
That's right.
And you can't ask for voter ID to vote. But to get into the Democratic National, I mean, this is where it's obviously not about what they say it's about.
No.
If it was about, it's racist to ask for ID, well, then you would do it to get it. Then you wouldn't be able to do it to get into the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah.
I mean, it's transparent dishonesty is all over the place.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Both Matt Walsh and James O'Keefe have both made their way into the DNC.
How did that?
Did they check his ID? Or
I wasn't there for it, but they're both inside. They were both inside. In disguise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. How'd you go, Rami? No good?
Yeah, I'd probably get maybe Chris to talk more about, Kamala, and maybe he could go and help me.
Just again going through the DNC process after Joe said that he wouldn't run. The reason why you didn't see any other nominees, and this ended up with a final virtual roll call when it came to nomination,